Assalamualaikum, welcome to Hifz for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake. Today we'll be covering how to memorize. So the first step of memorizing is the preparation. So you do this the night before you can actually memorize. So first of all, you're going to have the intention, memorizing purely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake, not for showing off or not for your friend or someone else, just for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake. And after you have that solid intention, you're going to read that page or a portion of a page, really whatever amount you want to memorize, 20 times before you sleep. In this way, you will be familiar with that page and you will remember it better. So the next day, in the morning right after Fajr Salah, preferably, you're going to read the first line of that page until memorized properly. And what I mean by this is you can visualize it in your head and you have no mistakes. And of course you can verify if you have no mistakes by reciting that same line from memory 3 times. Okay, so once you memorize the first line, you're going to move on to the second line. Do the same thing, read it a couple of times until you think you memorize it, and then verify it by reciting that same line 3 times without looking. So by now you have 2 lines memorized, right? So to have the connection between both of these lines, you're going to read both of them while looking twice and once without. So you don't have to think what the next line is. It'll be automatic. Okay, so you're going to keep doing this procedure, connecting every time you memorize a new line, right? And until you reach the end of the page. Of course, if there's a mistake on a certain word, meaning you're replacing it with another word, or you're just skipping it, you want to read that word, the word before and after, 5 times while looking, and once without. So let's see an example, a real example of memorizing. So this is the first page of Surah Mujadila, 28th juz. So let's take our procedure out here. So this is our procedure. So what are you going to do? We're going to read this first line properly, right? Until we memorize it. So for an example, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. قد سمع الله قول التي تجادلك في زوجها وتشتكي إلى الله. You're going to read this about 15 times. Generally, it takes about 15 times to memorize it. Now, if it takes more time than that, maybe maybe 20 times, it doesn't matter. Just make sure you're reading it correctly. So once you read this first line and you think you memorized it, you're going to read it without looking 3 times. And yes, so you're going to move on to the next line after this. وَاللَّهُ يَسْمَعُ تَهَاوُرَكُمَا إِنَّ اللَّهَ سَمِيعٌ بَصِيرٌ. You're going to read this line about 15 times again, and you're going to recite 3 times without looking. So by now, again, as I told you, you have both of these lines memorized, and you have to have that connection between them. So you do this by reading both of them while looking twice, and then once without. So now you have this connection. So you're going to memorize the third line now. Memorize this whole thing about 15 times, as I told you, and recite 3 times without looking, and then recite all these 3 lines, all 3, while looking twice, once without. So you're going to keep doing this procedure until you reach the end of the page, right? And another thing I want to note, some people, they memorize by associating each word with another word. Personally, I don't think this is a good method of memorizing because you could forget this very easily. The real trick of memorizing is repetition. As everyone tells you, it's repetition and reading it again and again. It's trying not to associate each word with another word, and that way it'll be more solid in your memory. So yes, I hope you guys learned how to memorize efficiently. And so yeah, if you want to see how to revise what you already learned, then you can see my how to revise video. And if you want to see why are we memorizing, what's the point of memorizing, you can see my why memorize video, and in that video I give you some points of why memorize. And yes, so Assalamualaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.